Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to the fourth video of Azure AI Fundamentals course. In the previous lesson, we discussed about the text analytics feature of Azure AI Language Service as well as Azure AI Translator Service. In this one, we'll be discussing about conversational language understanding, which is one of the custom features offered by Azure AI Language. The concept for this lesson is inspired from the AI-102 training I attended to pass the certification. I'll provide the link to the above said training in the description box below. Without further introduction, let's get into the video. Azure AI Language Service has three features. One is text analytics, then there is conversational language understanding, and then question answering. So text analytics we have discussed in the previous video. In this session, we'll be discussing about conversational language understanding. A conversational language understanding helps us to develop a custom natural language understanding model. Now, what a CLU model is supposed to do? So, it is supposed to analyze the user input. From the user input, the model will be able to extract important information. That is what the purpose of a language understanding model is. Now there are three terms which are important regarding a CLU model. One is utterance. So utterance is any phrase or text input by the user. Anything asked by the user to a chatbot or CLU model is known as utterance. For example, book a flight to Sydney on March 29th. That is an utterance. So that is a user input. Now another example is get me the time in Sydney. That is also a user input or utterance. Now what the model does is the model will evaluate these user input or utterances and will extract the intent and entity from these inputs. Now what is intent? Intent is the action term in the utterance. For example, in book a flight to Sydney, the intent is book a flight. That is the action term present in the intent. Now what is an entity? Entity is the relevant information or relevant data which supports the intent. So for book a flight, there will be follow-up questions. Where to book the flight? When to book the flight? So those are the entities, the additional data. So in the given utterance, Sydney is the location entity and March 29th is the date entity. So what a conversational language understanding model is supposed to do is it will extract important information from user utterance like intent and entity. The real life use case of conversational language understanding is building an intelligent chatbot, virtual assistant and voice application. Now for example, you have a chatbot in the customer management of a banking sector. The users will ask questions to this chatbot and the chatbot can analyze these input questions, figure out the intent of the user and redirect to the user to that specific team. For example, the user is asking how can I create a savings account? So the chatbot can redirect the user to the savings account team. Then someone is mentioning fraud in their input utterance, then the chatbot can redirect it to the security team. And if someone is asking about loan, the chatbot can redirect them to the loan department. So that is a use case scenario of conversational language understanding model. Now how can we build a CLU model? It was earlier known as LUIS or Language Understanding Intelligence Service. Now they call it as Conversational Language Understanding or CLU. Now this is how we build a CLU project. First we have to select the data and define schema. After that we have to label the data, train the model. After training we have to view the performance of the model. And if the performance is satisfactory, we can directly deploy the model or we can improve the model by adding more training data and then deploy the model. Then the users can use the deployed endpoint to predict intents and entities. So these are the steps of deploying a CLU model. Now let us see the demo. This is my Azure portal. Here I'll select Azure AI services and the service I need is language service. Now I will create a new resource and here the demo will be seen as conversational language understanding. I'll continue to create the resource and I have to select a resource group. I have an existing resource group. I will select that one. I'll go with the default region. I'll provide name for my language resource. Then I'll go with standard tier. I have used up my free tier. That's why I have only standard tier. If you have free tier, you can select that. I'll check this box, review and create the language service. Now the deployment is complete. I'll go to the resource, select this one, and this is how my resource look like. Get started with language service, and what I need is language studio. So we'll be doing this demo in the language studio. I'll click this link, and this is my language studio. And I just select my Azure resource. Resource type is language, and my resource name is CLU demo 4357, which we created few seconds ago. I'll select it and click done. Here I'll go to understand questions and conversational language. And there you can see conversational language understanding next generation of LUIS. It will classify utterances into indents and extract information with entities to build natural language into apps, boards and IoT devices. So we have seen utterances, what is entities, and we know what is conversational language understanding. Now we'll open this and create a new project. For this demo, I'll be following this Microsoft documentation on creating a language understanding model with language service. I'll provide the link for this documentation in the description box. So I'll be doing this demo now. I'll name my project clock and it's English. I don't want multiple languages for my project. I'll provide a description for my project and I'll click on next and create my project. Now our project is created. I'll go into the project and here you can see indents. So first what we had to do is add an indent. So we'll be having two indents. One is get time and the next is get day. So these are the two indents which we are going to add into our project. So let us start with get time. I'll click on add. Then you can provide the indent. Based on your requirement, you can give the indent. Maybe it is book flight. So you can provide the indent as book flight. Here I'm giving get time and I'll add the indent. Now I'll go to the indent and next step is to add utterances to these indents. So the indent is get time. So the user may ask the model different format of the question. The user may ask, what is the time in London now? Or he may ask, can you please tell me the time in Sydney? Or the user can format his question in multiple ways. We can provide multiple user utterances and train the model. So first I'll select the indent get time and I will add the utterances to it. So the first utterance is what time is it in London? And I'll press enter and the same question can be formatted in another means. The user can ask, tell me the time in Sydney. He can change the location. So I will add that utterance to get time indent. So there may be multiple utterances, but there is only single indent and the indent is get time. So you have to add at least 10 utterances to an indent. So what I'll do is I will add all these utterances and save it and resume the video. Now I have added 10 utterances to get time indent. So these are the various format of the same question. What time is it in Bangkok right now? What's the time in Ottawa? What time is it in Bangalore right now? Do you know what time it is in Japan? And all this various type of utterances I have added, and don't forget to save changes. Now, the next main thing to do is add entity. So we know what is entity. So in this scenario, the entity will be location. So in the first question, the entity is Bangkok. And here the location has changed, which is Ottawa. So in all these utterances, we have to add entity. And in this scenario, the entity is location. And we'll be going with learned entity, which means machine learned entity. We are going to label the entity in each of these utterances and then train the model. So we are manually going to label these entities and we'll be teaching the model. So it is learned entity. I will add entity location. So on the right, you can see the entity present here. Now I have to label this entity in each of this utterance. So here, this is the entity location and this utterance, it is this. Here it is Bangalore Japan, Auckland. Now I have selected the entity location in each of these utterance. Now what I will do is save changes. Now here you can see location 10 and it is learned entity. Now don't expect the model to provide the time. So if you're asking what's the time in London, it won't provide the time in London. What the model does is it will correctly identify the indent and entity from the user utterance. That is what the model is supposed to do. So if you want the model to go out and fetch the time in these location, it need more functionality. You have to attach an agent that will fetch the time for you, or you need to call a function. So that is not the motive here. What we are testing out is whether the model is able to identify the correct indent from the user utterance. That is what the demo is about. So don't think the model will go out and fetch time in these locations. So I have to put that out. Now we have created one indent and added utterances and entity to it. Now we can go back and see our project. So this is our project and here we have one indent. Now we can add another indent, which is get day. I'll add get day. We'll add the indent. We'll go to that indent and we'll add relevant utterances. So these are the related utterances. What day was on? 1/1/1901. So I'll give the utterance here. Now I'll provide 10 utterances and resume the video. I have added 10 utterances to the get day indent. Which day was October 8th? What day was 23/5/2001? Like that, different formats of utterances. Now what I need to do next is I have to add entity. Now by looking at the utterance, what will be the entity? Now here the entity is date. We are asking which day is this particular date in every of these utterances. So in this particular scenario, the entity will be date. And each of the utterances, you can see different dates. So now what we have to do is add a new entity. And here we will name the entity as date. And we will go with pre-built entity. This time not learned entity. We are not teaching the model or entity. We are going with pre-built entity. And I will add entity. Now here you can see this date entity. So now what is a pre-built entity? Pre-built entity means which is already built in the model. We don't want to teach the model again. It is the model will be able to identify the pre-built entity by its own. So let us see that. And here in the date entity, you have to select which pre-built entity we are using. And here I'll select add new pre-built. And in this case, the pre-built entity we are looking for is date time expressions. Example, May 11th. We'll select the date time pre-built entity. Again, there is email. If your utterances has any email, you can select the email pre-built entity. Then there is IP address, organization, person name, number, age, currency, etc. So in this scenario, we'll select date, time, and then I will save it. So in the date entity, I have selected pre-built date, time, and I'm clicking here required. Now let us go back to our schema definition, and we have 10 utterances each, and here we have a machine learned entity, and for get day, we are using a pre-built entity. We haven't teach the model or did any machine learning. Let us see whether the model is smart enough to identify this as date. Now the next step is training the model. So we'll go to training and I'll start a training job. I have to provide the name of my model, which is clock. Then I'll go with standard training. And I'll go with default data splitting, which is 80 will be used for training and 20 will be used for testing and evaluation of the model. Now I will click train. Now it will take few minutes to train the model. Now the training is succeeded. And if you click here on the left side, you can see all the details, how much time it took. The job is succeeded and everything. Now the next step is to see the model performance. So this is our model. So this is the performance. It says F1 score is 100%, precision is 100%, recall is 100%. So it is a perfect model or the ideal model. So based on these performance, we can deploy the model. Again, I have talked about precision and recall in custom vision session. So if you haven't watched that, please check that out. So since we have got a perfect evaluation matrix. I'll go and deploy the model. Again, here you can see the performance of the model, and as I said earlier, 80% of the data, which is 8 of the utterance, is used to train the model and 2 of the utterance is used to test the model. And again, I forgot to talk about non-intent. So there was a non-intent earlier. So what is that about us? You can add any utterances that is not related to your model in the non-intent. For example, book flight ticket. That is not an intent related to your model. So every utterance that is not related to your model you can add in the non-intent. Book a flight ticket to Japan or order me a pizza. All these unrelated ones you can add in the non-intent. So the model will be correctly able to categorize if a user is asking something unrelated. So the model can categorize that utterance into the non-intent and react accordingly. So that is what is non-intent. So here we have two intents which we created and added relevant utterances, and there is a default non-intent. For the time being, we haven't added any utterances to the non-intent, but it is a good practice to add utterance to the non-intent and train the model. Now you can see all these details, test set details. Then you can see the data set distribution and confusion metrics. So next step is to deploy the model. I'll go ahead and deploy this model. I'll click on add deployment. I'll create a new deployment, clock model, I'll name it. Then I'll select the trained model and go with the default region and will deploy it. Now the deployment is complete. Now we have deployed the model. Next is testing the deployment. So now let us test our model. I'll select my deployment, clock model, and I'll ask few questions to the model. So I'll ask what's the current time in Paris, and let us see whether the model is able to correctly identify the intent and the entity. I'll run the test and it is able to identify the top intent. So it has said it is get time. So it has eliminated the get day intent and selected the get time intent with a confidence score of 91.8%, which is correct. Next, it has identified the entity as location Paris with a confidence score of 100%. So that is exactly correct. Now I will ask another question. Which day was this particular date? And I will run the test. And yes, the model is able to identify the intent as get day. So it has eliminated get time intent and selected the get day intent with a confidence score of 96.8%, and the entity selection is also correct. It has selected the date entity with a confidence score of 100%. Again, remember, we haven't teach the model. We haven't labeled the date. We have selected the pre-built entity and hope the model will correctly identify the date. And yes, exactly, the model has correctly identified the entity and it has given this particular entity is date with 100% confidence score. Now we can ask a twisted question and try to confuse the model a little bit. Let us be a little cheeky. I'll ask, hey, do you have any idea about the time in Canberra? So that is a different format of an utterance which we haven't trained the model. So let us see how smart our model is, whether our model is able to identify the correct intent and identity from this input utterance. So I will click run the test. Okay, and the model has correctly identified the top intent, which is get time with a confidence score of 89.3%, and it has identified the entity location as Canberra with 100% of confidence score. That's good. Now we can ask another question about get day intent. Is there any way to know which day was 5th May 2024? So again, this is a slightly reformatted utterance which we haven't trained our model with. Now let us ask this question. Now the model is able to identify the intent as get day and the confidence score is 88.71% and the entity is date and it has identified 5th May 2024 as date with 100% confidence. Okay. Now we can ask the model a totally unrelated question. So I'm not expecting the model to behave Well, because I haven't added any utterances to the none indent. So that is exactly what you want to do. But here, let us see what the model will react. Can I order a pizza? Sorry, I'll add can you order a pizza for me? And I'll run the test. Okay, it had identified the get day indent, but look at this, the confidence score is very less. It is only 29.73% and no entities has been identified. So our model is pretty good. So for these questions, you can add in the none indent and train the model. So the model will give correct output. It will give the output, the indent is none indent with very high confidence score. So here the model no, it is no way related to get day utterance. That's why the confidence score is only 29.7%. So the conversational language understanding model is pretty good. Again, you can get the output in the JSON format. Here you can see the top indent selected and then what is the confidence score, entity, etc. So this is how a conversational language understanding model works. First, we have to create the project, add all the indents what we need and add utterances to each of the indents. We need minimum 10 utterances to each of the indent, and you can also add entities to these indents. The entities can be machine learned, where we will label those entities and tell the model, hey, this is the entity. We are labeling the entity. Otherwise, we can go with pre-built entity if that is already pre-built within the model, like date, time, geography, IP address, phone number, etc. Those are the pre-built entities available in the model. So we can go with pre-built entity so that we don't want to label our data. Then again, we can add unrelated utterances to the none indent and then train the model. And after that, we can train the model, review the performance, deploy the model and test our deployment with various utterances. So that is what we have done in this demo. Now, don't forget to clean up the resources. You have to delete the project and delete the language resource which you have created in the Azure portal. Since I'm in the standard tier, it will incur cost for me. So I'll go ahead and delete these resources. Now we have seen the demo on conversational language understanding and we have a pretty good idea about utterance, entity and indent and how a CLU model will work. Now let us go straight into the knowledge test. So the user input is book a flight to Paris for tomorrow. Which of the following is true? Now 4 options are provided. Go through the options and come up with the correct answer. So here the utterance is book a flight to Paris for tomorrow. Now what is the indent present in this utterance? Book a flight is the indent, that is the action term. Now what are the entities? We know one of the entity is Paris, which is location. We have seen that in the demo. So Paris is the one of the entity. Again, tomorrow is another entity. So let us go through the option. The first option is the indent is book flight and the entity is Paris. Paris is a destination or location. So that is the correct statement. The next is the utterance is flight booking and the entity is tomorrow. So that is not correct. The utterance is book a flight to Paris for tomorrow. So this is incorrect. And tomorrow is an entity. That part of the option is correct, but the utterance is not flight booking. The next is the indent is travel plan and the entity is Paris. So the indent is not travel plan. The indent is book flight. Tomorrow is an entity. Yes, tomorrow is a date time entity. So that is correct. So option A and D are true. Option B and C are false. Now to the next question. You have successfully trained and published an Azure conversational language understanding model. Now you plan to integrate the REST endpoint into your application to process user queries and commands. When your application sends a user input to the REST endpoint, what key information is included in the response? Select 2 correct answers. Now go through the option and figure out the correct one. Now here we know what all are the outputs we got. A list of recognized indents along with their confidence score. Did we get that output? Let us go back and check that out. So in our deployment, we are testing it. We are running this utterance, run the test. And what is the output? We got indents with the confidence score and the entity with the confidence score. So this is the output which we got. Now let us come back to the question and see what all the options are correct. So we got a list of recognized indents along with their confidence score. Yes, indeed, we got that. We got the indent and the confidence score. A list of possible alternative user inputs with confidence score. No, we didn't get that. A list of identified entities extracted from the user input. Yes, we got the list of identified entities. So that is correct. The detected language of the user's input query. No, we didn't get the detected language of the user input query. So the correct options are A and C. Although they say about calling the REST endpoint, here in this user interface, we are indirectly calling the REST endpoint of our deployed model. So both the output will be similar. So here the correct answer is we'll get a list of recognized indents along with the confidence score and a list of identified entities with the confidence score. So that is the output of a CLU model. Now, what did we learn from this lesson? We learned about conversational language understanding. We deployed a CLU model in Azure AI Language Studio. In the next lesson, we'll be discussing about custom question answering. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll meet you in the next.